As the members of the European Parliament return to their offices in Brussels this week, several EU member states are considering a formal recognition of a Palestinian state during the upcoming debate of the United Nations General Assembly in New York at the week starting with the 22nd of September. This topic remains a divisive question in the European Union, and many governments are split as to how to proceed, including the Dutch government. The Dutch Parliament has very recently rejected a motion to recognize a Palestinian state. In this edition of the European Report, we are going to discuss this topic. Time to recognize a Palestinian state, this is the question. And we are going to discuss the prospect of such a recognition. We are going to ask the question, is this a process which will enhance peace between Israel and the Palestinians, or could it be potentially even counterproductive? With me in the studio this month, here in the European Parliament, we have the Deputy Chairman of the European Parliament Delegation for Relations with Israel, MEP Bert-Jan Ruissen, from the Netherlands, member of the European Conservatives and Reformists Group, and of course Tomas Sandell, founding director of the European Coalition for Israel. Thank you both for being today. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz from European Jewish Press and Europe-Israel Press Association. This is the European Report. MEP Ruissen, you are in the European Parliament since 2019,
yes,
where you are sitting as a member of the Reformed political party, SKP, in the Netherlands. The foreign minister of your country, Caspar Veldkamp, resigned the other week over the very issue of recognition of a Palestinian state and over what happens in Gaza. There will now be a new general election in October in your country. Not only for this, but it was already decided in June with the resignation of one of the parties.
Yes.
So, in your assessment, why does Israel continue to divide EU member state governments?
Well, as what you already said in your introduction, it's clear it all has to do with Gaza, and it all has to do with the war in Gaza. It's in the news, it's in the headlines every day already for now 2 years. And we must say, unfortunately, that Hamas is very effective in the media. We are confronted with Hamas propaganda. And unfortunately, we have to say that the media, or the mainstream media, is spreading Hamas propaganda in Europe. I don't say that the situation is not difficult in Gaza. We realize that the situation is difficult in Gaza. But given the fact that the information and the media is so one-sided, as a consequence of that, we see a public opinion which is becoming more and more anti-Israel. And as a result of that, well, it's clear that politicians are sensitive for what's in the public opinion. And as a consequence of that, you see indeed that politicians, like for example our foreign minister Veldkamp, he started as a really constructive minister, with a very constructive agenda related to Israel, and unfortunately he ended as minister with a very negative agenda against Israel, asking for sanctions, asking for boycotting. Israel, and that was the reason indeed that he had to resign. That's a reality we have to live, I think. And well, what we see in the Netherlands and the tensions in the government, we see that also in other member states. We are very divided in Europe.
Do you mean that the 7th of October has been forgotten and it's only the humanitarian situation that is discussed today?
Indeed, that's what we unfortunately see in the media. Nobody is talking about 7th of October, or just a few people are just talking about 7th of October and what happens. It seems indeed that we in Europe, we forgot what happens on the 7th of October. And we have forgotten that there are still hostages in Gaza.
48 hostages.
Indeed, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tomas Sandell, I understand that in your country, Finland, the situation is quite similar. Finland is with Sweden, I think, the only Nordic countries which have not recognized a Palestinian state. Norway did already. So what are your prospects of Finland recognizing a Palestinian state, now that others are doing it? And can you explain to our viewers where does the current center-right Finnish government stand on Israel?
Well, Yossi, just to correct you on one point, Sweden did recognize a Palestinian state. That was the first thing the last social democratic government did. Denmark and Finland are the two remaining countries which have not done so. Maybe it's also worthwhile saying that almost as a rule, those countries which have recognized a Palestinian state are governments dominated by the left. So when it comes to center-right, there have not been a similar trend.
Like Finland and Denmark.
Denmark is interesting because they have a social democratic prime minister, but nevertheless a very realistic view on this conflict.
And we will discuss it further.
Of course, yeah. So in Finland we have this situation with the president who is very proactive on the international scene. He wants to be on the right side Alexander Stubb. He wants to be on the right side of history. I recently wrote an op-ed where I told him that if he wants to be on the right side of history, meaning that recognizing a Palestinian state, is that he missed the train already, because already in 1988 the Soviet Union recognized a Palestinian state. So I think it takes some of the moral high ground out of that argument. The government is divided. The Christian Democrats have made it very clear they will leave the government if Finland would recognize the Palestinian state. The true Finns are also against it. The Conservative Party is divided. But still we have a foreign minister and, as I said, a president that would very much like this to happen. What is important to say in the case of Finland is that if we look at the national interest, I think the only thing that Finland needs to take into consideration right now is the relations to Russia.
Yeah.
So
Ukraine.
The Ukraine situation, and as we know, Finland could be next if we don't play our cards wisely. And alienating the Trump administration, which had made it very clear that they are not in favor of a recognition, and also alienating the Israeli government, which has a very close defense cooperation with Finland. Just to mention David Sling, this would be detrimental for the national interest of Finland. I think this is slowly but surely starting to sink in. Also for the president and the foreign minister, this is a no-go. It is not in the interest of the Palestinian people. It is not in the interest, the national interest of Finland to make such a move.
Question to both of you, MEP Ruissen and Tomas Sandell. I would like to know your opinions on a recognition of a Palestinian state. Do you think that this could promote peace between Israel and the Palestinians in the future, or could it be, on the contrary, counterproductive? MEP Ruissen, please.
In my opinion, very counterproductive. When you recognize now a Palestinian state, then you are rewarding, in my opinion, Hamas for the terror attacks of 7th of October. And when you are recognizing a Palestinian state now, then you give Hamas new hope that they can survive and that they can play a role in a kind of a Palestinian state. And we all know, and we have to realize that peace is only possible in the region. Peace is only possible when Hamas is not there anymore. We have to stop Hamas. Hamas cannot play a role in Gaza or in the Palestinian areas. And I think we have also to realize that in order to create a state, then you have to some requirements have to be met.
Some conditions.
Some conditions. And none of the conditions are met, in my opinion. One of the conditions is, for a state, you need to have a stable government. Well, there's no stable government in the Palestinian areas.
Elections.
Borders. Do we have an agreement about the borders? No. So I see a lot of difficulties, and my main point is you are rewarding, in my opinion, a terror organization, and I also see big threats for Israel, because when you are creating now a Palestinian state, where are the security guarantees? I don't see the security guarantees. I'm afraid that we are giving green lights for a Palestinian state who will develop in the direction of a terror state. So I really think that member states who choose for a recognition of a Palestinian state are making a fundamental mistake. And we were just talking also about conservative and about the Christian Democrats' position. Unfortunately, we have also to say and to see that also the Christian Democrats in Europe are divided. It's good to hear that the Christian Democrats in Finland are still against. But the Christian Democrats in my country, in the Netherlands, are in the forefront for asking a recognition of a Palestinian state. It's unbelievable.
In Belgium also.
Yes, it's really unbelievable. Yeah.
Thomas, Sandell, the same question for you.
Well, I think Bert-Jan said most of it, you know, how, I mean, the basic question, what exactly are we recognizing? Is it Gaza? Is it the so-called West Bank? Is it a combination? And if so, who is the governing party? It's very complex. To try to make sense of all of that. And in case it is the Palestinian Authority, it means that they are responsible for the 48 hostages which are still left in Gaza. And under no circumstances could a new state be recognized being in a war situation where you keep innocent civilians in tunnels under the most inhumane circumstances. That is a complete no-go. I would say that it's interesting what we see in parts of Europe right now is a similar strategy as we saw in the Arab world. If you want to deflect from domestic issues, like in France, France is in a complete mess right now, fiscally, may have a, you know, the government may collapse as early as next week. So when you want to deflect, you start speaking about something completely,
turning the attention
turning the attention elsewhere. And the Jews are always a good scapegoat to say, well, listen, at least, you know, we get this question right. I think what this is an expression of is that in Europe, people that we see out demonstrating are much more radicalized than the people in the Arab world at the moment. And when you speak with people from Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, even from Saudi Arabia, they can't understand even why we let the Muslim Brotherhood continue to infiltrate our institutions, why we continue to have Al Jazeera on the air. When the first thing we did with the war with Ukraine is that, between Ukraine and Russia, is that we banned Sputnik and RT because they were war propaganda. So, and as Bert-Jan said, that, elected leaders will have to react to this in one way or another. But I think we have to deal with the root cause, and that is the radicalization and giving anti-democratic forces free rein on our streets and our institutions in Europe. And we need to put the focus there.
You spoke about scapegoats. The initiative of the recognition of a Palestinian state came from French President Macron. Mm-hmm. He initiated it. The US ambassador to France, Charles Kushner, lambasted the French leader and accused him of fueling anti-Semitism in the country, in France. We have seen anti-Semitic incidents almost every day in France and elsewhere in Europe during the summer, also against Israelis. Do you agree with Kushner's assessment that this is fueling anti-Semitism?
Yes, this is fueling anti-Semitism, sure, yes. So it's not only a threat for Israel as a state, but it also, this proposal of recognition of the Palestinian state is also a threat, indeed, for our Jewish community in Europe. It's also an important dimension to realize.
And many Jews, of course, for example, I know that in Belgium, for example, many Jews are thinking about leaving because they are threatened because of this.
Yeah, and what about the Jewish students on universities?
On universities, in Brussels University. The Brussels University have been promoting Rima Hassan, one of the MEP, very anti-Israel. So, Tomas, the same question regarding is it fueling anti-Semitism to recognize a Palestinian state? No.
I think it's rewarding terrorism. It's giving in to very strong anti-Semitic sentiments on the streets in Europe. And it's not producing anything, not peace, the least of all. I think it's creating a general atmosphere of unease for the Jewish population in Europe. When you every day wake up to the same morning news, and I said, and there was just recently, just to give you one example, they said a very authoritative research association had just confirmed that what happens in Gaza is a genocide. So this was just one example of people are sending in, their information to editors across Europe, and they always, take it on because it strengthens their narrative. But when you looked at this particular research association, and people took the trouble of going to their website, and it said that this is an association when anyone can join for €30 per year. And it consists, yes, of some academics, but mostly of artists, of human rights activists, and the list went on. It had nothing to do with academic research, but it just gives the example of how easily this disinformation is amplified by legacy media. And no one is asking the question because it fuels into the narrative which is being repeated on and on again. And if it is so that Israel is responsible for a genocide, of course it will spill over to people being very suspicious of anyone who shows any kind of support with the Jewish state, and especially to those who are Jews themselves. So yes, indirectly this is fueling anti-Semitism big time.
MEP Ruissen, apart from the question, the issue of recognition of a Palestinian state, there are calls in Europe for trade sanctions on Israel, which have been initiated also by Dutch foreign minister at the time. But this call has gained some traction in Europe. We see other countries like the support of Sweden, now with Denmark also calling for trade sanctions. You are the deputy chairman of the European Parliament Delegation for relations with Israel. What are your thoughts on this problem of call for sanctions?
Yes, well, it's in my opinion unbelievable that the Dutch government, also the current Dutch government or the caretaking government, is still pushing for sanctions. And is still taking the lead in the discussion in the EU in their request for sanctions. And now indeed they sent a letter together with the Swedish government asking for more sanctions and also for boycotting, for example, products from Judea and Samaria. It's unbelievable. My thoughts about that are, I would say, to our Dutch government and to the Swedish government and to their leaders in Europe, please realize that Israel is in the fight, is in the war against a terror organization. Please realize what happens at the 7th of October. Please realize that there are still hostages in Gaza. And yes, we see that the situation is difficult in Gaza, but instead of blaming Israel for everything what is happening, please let us help Israel where we can in the fight against radicalization, for example, and the fight against anti-Semitism. Also in supplying sufficient humanitarian aid. Unfortunately, we see that the international community is blaming also Israel for the humanitarian aid, but in order to blame Israel, we can also try to help Israel and to coordinate the humanitarian aid. So that's my thought.
Tomas Sandell, you have been involved in pro-Israel advocacy for many years, and we have seen other crisis situation between EU and Israel. We have seen, for example, for 10 years, the EU-Israel Association Council has not met because of differences on the West Bank and Palestinian issue. Could you think of a similar situation over the last 22 years that you have covered? Has Israel always been contested at the EU as it is now?
The answer is no. And I think the decisive factor is not what has happened politically in the political class, but what has happened over the last 10 years, over the last 15 years with the cognitive warfare, meaning that the soft influence, the hybrid warfare in Europe to influence the narrative has been so immense, and it's growing in strength from day to day. I could name foreign countries which are very much included in this. But what I would say, coming back to the question you raised with Bert-Jan, is that we have to remember, I have repeated this on and on again, but I think it's worth repeating in every program. If it's true what Chancellor Merz and others have said, that Israel is doing the dirty work for us, everyone agrees that Hamas needs to be defeated, they need to be dismantled. If it is so, we have a choice either to be involved, like we were involved in defeating ISIS, like Macron was calling for a coalition to defeat Hamas. If we don't get involved, if we stay on the sideline and just criticize, we better keep quiet. So I think we have to look at this big picture, because we can always, once you're involved in a war, you make mistakes. There is suffering in Gaza. There's no point in denying that. And for every civilian that dies. It's a tragedy for us, for Israel, but it's a strategy for Hamas. And we need to make this very clear. And if we don't, then we have lost the moral compass. And I would hate to see that happen in Europe.
MEP Ruissen, which are other important issues that are going to be on the agenda in the coming weeks and months in the European Parliament?
The European Parliament. Well, I expect that also in the European Parliament, every plenary session, we will have discussions about Gaza and about Israel. And I expect that we will also have discussions about, I think the General Assembly of the United Nations. You already mentioned in your introduction the fact that Macron and other leaders announced that they will recognize a Palestinian state. I think we will have also debates in the European Parliament about that.
So we will follow the debate.
We will follow that, yes,
okay,
sure.
Thank you. This brings us to an end of this edition. I would like to thank again a member of the European Parliament, Bert-Jan Ruissen, and the founding director of European Coalition for Israel, Tomas Sandell. Thank you for joining me. I would like again to call for the release of all the 48 hostages still in captivity by Hamas. Bring them home now. To our readers, as always, if you like our program, please feel free to share the YouTube link with your friends and colleagues. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz. You have just watched the European Report. See you again next month.